Hi, welcome. I'm Eleanor, and today is the 18th of August, which means it's the 18th day of the Stile challenge. Before I start talking about the poetry book of the day, I want to do a shout out for Novella, best YouTube name. And I just want to thank you. You have cheered me on the last two mornings. I woke up to find a comment from Anne saying, keep reading poetry, go, 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 with lots of exclamation marks. And it just really helped me get over the hump. And I'm feeling more energized today. And I just want to say how much I appreciate it, how much I appreciate your booktubish friendship. I do recommend to anyone watching Anne's amazing booktube channel. I will leave the link down below, especially if you're interested in translated literature. It's really wonderful. So now, what am I talking about today? I am talking about another Alice Oswald book. And it was unexpected. I didn't plan to do two Oswald books. I didn't even really plan to read Alice Oswald. I had bought this book I guess about a month ago on a whim. This is the very first book she ever had published. It was at the age of 30 in 96. And when I was in Melbourne at this great bookstore, and I noticed that they had almost all of her books there. And a lot of them are reworkings, reinterpretations of the Odyssey and the Iliad, from what I remember. And that frankly put me off. I'm not a big Homer fan, and I don't really feel like doing a lot of research, but this one seemed to have, none of that in it. So I thought, okay, I'll buy that. Of course, I never read it, because why would you read something that you bought, right? But then the other day, it occurred to me that I didn't feel like reading it. And my local bookstore, for some miraculous reason, had this, which is her latest book, which she wrote just, very recently, when she was around 55, 56. So this I was very attracted to, as you remember. I'm not going to go back and do that review again. So by chance, I now have her very first book and her latest book. So after reading this, I was so interested in her and her work that I couldn't help myself. I had to go see what would an author who had written this at an older age have written when she was just starting out. And I have not been disappointed. I really would recommend, if you're new to Alice Oswald, as I was, to do it in that way. It's a lot of fun and something you don't often get to see. So I start reading the thing in the Gapstone style, and I am enjoying myself more and more as the poems progress. There's no sections, there's just, a list of poems. And wouldn't you know it, right in the middle are 3 sea sonnets. So you can already see her interest in the sea and trying to describe it. And it's quite different in this context. It's much more lyrical. These are, I would say, lyrical poems. This, you might say, veers more towards an epic poem. Now, those definitions are still hazy in my mind, but I think they're hazy in poetry generally. All definitions are, because the minute you define something, it's, somebody writes something that can't be defined. And so I would also recommend that if you are beginning to be interested in craft as I am, that you look up an interview she did back in, I think it was 2020. I want to say December 2020. I will leave the link below. The podcast is called Between the Covers. It's an excellent podcast. And she discusses in it the way that she thinks of the definition of an epic. And she was saying that despite, Aristotle's definition and other great poets, great thinkers' definitions, she feels that an epic is different in its use of the line. So the line is contained. Each line is really has much more, the way she put it was, has much more space around it. With the lyric poem, there's almost no space. You just keep moving with the personal eye of the speaker of the poem. And that really opened my eyes to the difference between the two books. And the interesting thing is that at the last poem of the book is actually, in a way, a kind of intro to epic or mini epic that a beginning poet might work on. She calls it The Three Wise Men of Gotham Who Set Out to Catch the Moon in a Net. It's very funny, and it's also very, very sweet and moving. And it's in blank verse, which means that it doesn't rhyme, but it's written in iambic pentameter, so that's 5 beats to a line, and it's da-dum, 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 more or less. And that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun to read. But back to the lyric poems. I see now several things about Alice Oswald that aren't necessarily apparent in Nobody. First of all, she's able to describe what it's like to be a gardener in the most beautiful detail that makes me immediately want to be a gardener. She herself has worked as a gardener and is still one, as far as I know. She loves that. And she's able to describe what it's like to be under the control, at the whim of the weather and of pests that may come, etc. And there is also the community, the camaraderie between the gardeners. There's one poem where actually a new gardener arrives, and they're all in his thrall because he shows them photographs from Australia, which I thought was fun. Then she talks about, where she lives and how she shares a wall with a neighbor. She also shares a hedge with a neighbor. And she has a few poems about this neighbor, Mrs. Kersey. She has a way of describing inanimate objects as well as plants. For example, she starts her poem, The Glass House, by writing, "The glass house is a hole in the rain." I mean, it immediately transports me into that world. To top it all off, of course, she has the second poem in the book. Its title is A Greyhound in the Evening After a Long Day of Rain. And she has the greyhound moving, just stepping away at the very end of the poem. And she captures exactly how a greyhound moves. I know because, I've adopted a greyhound just over a year ago, and he's just beautiful. She calls it, well, I'll read the last stanza maybe. No, I'll read the last section because it's in 4 sections. This is the 4th section of the Greyhound poem. They are returning to the rain's den, the grey folk, rolling up their veils, taking the steel taps out of their tips and heels. Grass lifts, Hedge breathes, rose shakes its hair. Birds bring out all their washed songs. Puddles like long knives flash on the roads. And evening has come with the late sun unloading a silence. Tiny begin-agains dancing on the night's edge. But what I want to know is, whose is the great grey wicker-limber hound, like a stepping on coal, going softly away? Now my greyhound is grey, so to read that, the great grey wicker-limber hound, chef's kiss, like a stepping on coal, exactly, going softly away, ... That's just stunning. That was actually the last 2 sections. In any case, the titular poem, what a great title, The Thing in the Gapstone Stile, right? So, oh, and it's very British. It's the references are very British. It's a very British countryside, which I love immersing myself in. So the poem of the title is really surprising, and a few of her poems are like this. She doesn't take herself too seriously when she's in her younger years, when she's, writing her first book. And she has the thing itself talking. And what is the thing? It actually tells you what it is in the near the end of the poem. It says, "What did I do?" And then in parentheses, "I am a gap." The gap in the Gapstone stile. So, of course, I Googled it. I know what a stile is from when, back when I was a child, and we lived in England, and we used to go on country walks. And a stile is a step up that allows you to go over a fence. The fence is there to keep the cows in or the sheep in, and so you go up you step on the stile and you step over. And there's a gap, it was often, which allows you to put your leg over. And so that gap is talking. So what did I do? I am a gap. Was lean these elbows on a wall and sat on my hunkers pervading the boulders. My pose became the pass across 2 kingdoms. Before, behind, antiphonal, my cavity the chord. And I certainly intended anyone to be almost abstracted on a gapstone between fields. And you do see, if you Google the image, that when there's a gap in a stile, it does abstract whatever view is. It's like it's framing something. Absolutely beautiful and fun, really fun. And then there's, love poems, fascinating. The melon grower. I mean, I'm looking, there's not one bad poem here. Wedding. This is how wedding starts. From time to time, our love is like a sail. And when the sail begins to alternate from tack to tack, it's like a swallowtail. I mean, I'll continue, but I won't, because I could be here all day. I mean, when she talks about the hedge with her neighbor, I can't help myself. Private property, it's called. "Oh, Mrs. Kersey, my hedge is your hedge, and you have it clipped just so far, and I have it hippie just so far. The long and the short of it is, our hedge has a ledge. I am tall, you are small. That sky is my sky. But you're welcome to wave things." It continues. It's so delightful. So there are these delightful, really young, joyful, sweet poems. There's a couple of poems where she describes what it's like to ride a bike through the countryside, and she captures it perfectly. I think if I was to get a book of poetry for a friend, I might think about this one, actually. I might do, if I ever had a friend who was interested in poetry and was the right personality, I would get these 2. Especially if it's someone who is in their 50s, who's around Alice Oswald's age at the moment. In fact, I think, hey, marketers, publicists of whatever publishing company, that would be a great way to market this. I would buy it. Okay, so that's it for me. A very successful day today was. Really enjoyable. Tomorrow I'll try to do something completely different because, I want to mix it up. I hope you all have a good day, a good evening, whatever time it is. And I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, the only real property is the property of the mind. Bye.